We're now thrilled to have a conversation between Max Dyer, the partnership's CEO and president, who you all heard from earlier, and best-selling author Michael Lewis, who also wrote the book The Fifth Risk. And they're going to talk about the stories we hear about civil servants and what's missing from the conversation. So with that, Max and Michael, over to you.
Okay, well, Lindsay, thank you so much for everything that you've done, and Hanadi as well in setting up this conference. We saved the best for last. Lindsay is very, very credible usually, although she said one thing incorrectly, which is she said you heard from me earlier today, and unfortunately my voice did give out. So that was actually not entirely accurate. Thankfully, I don't have to speak much because we've got the great and wonderful storyteller, Michael Lewis, who has been just deep in the woods of understanding our government and storytelling. So Michael, share how you came to this and what brought you to storytelling around the federal government and the federal workforce.
So you, in short, but right before I hit you, and I can't remember how we met, but it was the Trump transition. It was what caught my eye in the first place. It was this idea that I knew none of this, right? But I read in the newspaper that that the Obama administration had prepared all these briefings for the incoming administration, and that the Bush administration had done it for the Obama administration. I assumed like this is something that just had gone back, to George Washington. But it turned out that no, that the partnership was responsible for this and many other things. And I thought, wow, that's how weird that Trump has just fired the 500 and something people who were supposed to go in and get these briefings. And for me, I've never, only casually does it occur to me that what I'm doing is a civic duty. That in fact, it's a lot of literary opportunism. That I saw this thing, I thought, wow, I can go in and get the briefings that the Trump administration won't have gotten. That'll be cool. And it was just like a question of where to start. And I think before I got to you, my eye had further been caught by the fact that Rick Perry, who had said he wanted to eliminate the Department of Energy when he was a presidential candidate, had been put in charge of it. And I thought, well, that's a curious situation. They have no briefings and the guy in charge wants to get rid of it. I wonder what's there. So I had, no idea. Energy, I assumed. And what was interesting is when I canvassed my Berkeley friends, and here I am in a kind of a land of people who are really engaged with politics. And I'd ask them, do you got any idea what's inside the Department of Energy? It was like, nope. They knew nothing about the government. They could tell you hook, line, and sinker, like who had polled, in Missouri in 1942. They knew all about the politics and nothing about the government. And so I'm gonna keep talking, Max, because I know you can't. But I went in. It was comic. I went in just thinking I was gonna write a magazine piece. And what's there? Oh, they take care of the nuclear weapons. And I thought, oh my God. And very shortly after that, I found myself getting briefings from the people who wanted to brief the Trump administration about the nuclear stockpile. And the attitude, the tone was, wow, this is kind of fun to be able to give this briefing. We can't give it all to you because some of it's classified, but some of it's not, because we really wanted to tell someone. And so from that moment, I thought I could do this. This is like a routine I could play out for the rest of my life because it's the government's so big. And then somewhere in the middle of that, I called you, and I remember exactly where I was. I was in the parking lot of the Claremont Hotel, and I'd seen your name in the New York Times. And I called you, and you said, you more or less said, I've been waiting for your call, that you have no idea how good the material is. And the tone, you were so persuasive. And, the truth is, you were absolutely right. It's like the Fifth Risk was, think about, this is like the literary opportunity. And why it hasn't been picked up on completely, I don't know, but it will be. But I pick 3 agencies based one, randomly because of the Rick Perry connection, energy. And then I decided, this is going to be a stunt. I'm going to pick the agencies no one knows what's going on inside. And everybody sort of assumes, oh, you could get rid of it. It wouldn't matter. And so not State Department, but I picked Agriculture and Commerce. And each of these, I did 3 long pieces for Vanity Fair, stapled them together basically in a book, it was like more like a book-like object. The book sells 1 million copies, like without almost no effort from me. And there's this tailwind to this subject. Now, the question is why? I'll take some of the credit, a little bit, like I wrote it up in an entertaining way. But I think this country hungers for a civics lesson. They don't want to put that way, maybe, but all they get is politics. They don't have any clue what their government does. And when you start to introduce the possibility of loss, like here's something and you might lose it, they get really, really interested. So to that end, I mean, I left this to one side, and I assume that when there's a proof of concept, that all kinds of journalists would roll in, and I'd be reading stories about how your federal government works. And there's been very little of this. So I don't want to blow the secret, but I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we've done. David Shipley, the new-ish opinion editor of the Washington Post, has provided a forum for me to employ a bunch of other writers. Feels almost like a WPA project, and 7 writers are now wandering around the federal government, and these are world-class writers. Like these, some of my favorite people who put prose on paper. And it took about a nanosecond for at least 6 of them to find a subject, and all of them have said the same thing to me. They've all said, like, why did I not know this gold mine was here? Like, I'm never going to go away. And the only problem is, and it's only been a slight problem, is that the way the question is like, yeah, I always ask yourself, adverse selection. When you're a trader and a trade comes to you, you ask yourself, why am I seeing this trade? Am I seeing it because no one else wants to do this trade? You ask yourself, like, why does this opportunity exist? Like, why are these stories, these incredible stories? And they're either stories of functions of government, like things that are being done. Like, who knew there was a massive plume of radioactive waste from the plutonium factories of the 1940s moving towards the Columbia River, and then it's going to take $100 billion to clean up, and there are people in hazmat suit crawling all over, an area the size of a small state. I mean, these projects are wild, but the people, the kind of people who become civil servants, I mean, it's a mixed bag because it's so many people, but it's not that mixed a bag. It's really mission driven people, and also people who don't think of themselves. They're expert types. They don't think of themselves as stories. They aren't self promotional. Max, can I keep going? Because
you should absolutely keep going. The one point that I hope you will also insert in here is you sort of mentioned, like, what gets in the way of these stories getting told.
Yep. All right. So don't let me forget that. But first, this is one thing. So you got to say, why is this story available? Why is this gold mine not mined? Well, one is that the people who are doing it aren't trying to tell their story, and they aren't actually naturally characters in their own drama. So they're not out there telling people about it and talking about it and looking for attention. 2 is, all the attention they get is bad attention, that's in the DNA of the enterprise. It's like, you don't want to be hauled up in front of Congress. Like, you don't want people paying attention because it just gets in the way of you doing your job. But before I move on to what Max wants me to say, which is true, I want to tell you a little story. This is the epitome of the civil servant. I wrote for the addendum to the paperback of The Fifth Risk. I basically randomly picked a civil servant out of a massive stack of nominees for the Sammys Award. Picked him by the fact he was just first on the list. A guy named Arthur Allen. And I'm not going to go into what he did. What he did was he figured out ways to, all by himself. He's in the Coast Guard. He's an oceanographer. He invented essentially the science of how objects drift in the ocean, and it enabled the Coast Guard to easily pinpoint where people might be when they were lost at sea. It saved thousands of lives. It is really interesting as a story. You should read it. What I'm going to tell you, though, is I called him up, and he was furloughed at the time, right? Told he was an inessential worker. So he had time for me. He's in Connecticut. He says, sure, come on, I'll teach you all about what I do. I spent 3 days with him. We went to the Long Island Sound where he tested his objects. I interviewed his wife and his children. I mean, it was just in depth. On the way back to the airport, after I'd spent 3 days with him, he calls my cell phone and he says, "Hey, you're a writer." And I said, "Yeah, I'm a writer." He says, "No, like you're kind of big time. Like my son says that like one of your books got made into a movie." And I said, "Yeah, actually 3, you know." And he goes, "Wow." And I said, "But Art, like you just spent 3 days with me. Why did you think I was there?" And he said, "I just thought you were interested in how objects drift." Now, that is your civil servant, not prepared to like groom himself for the media. The big barrier, though, you know, I got to him because he was furloughed. He was at the end of his career. He didn't even call anybody and say, "Can I do this?" Like he didn't call his superiors at the Coast Guard. It's like some guy wants to know about how objects drift. I'll teach him. When you go through formal channels, or you go to people who are a little scared or nervous, younger in their career, that kind of thing, you get the political operation. You get communications people who are reflexively risk averse. And it's like, we want to know your story. We want to know the questions you're going to ask. We want to know your angle, which just kills me. I mean, I can't, I won't even do it at that point. It's like, I need honest access. And I need to hang with people. And I understand vetting for like dark characters, but vetting for kind of to micromanage a story just kills it. And the political, both sides do this. The political apparatus is set up not to let the stories be told, to get in the way of the stories. I mean, I've had communications people have the balls to tell me, "You don't know what the good story is. Here's the good story. It's not the person you're interested in. It's my boss." It's like, don't do that. You know, just don't do that. And at some point, I mean, I think we're in a crisis. We're obviously in a crisis. This stuff about trust in government, and it's all true. And it's because only one story gets out, the bad story. And the bad story is not even a true story. The deep state, all that stuff. It's so easy to campaign against the federal government. They're in your lives in ways you don't like. We're in a crisis if the other story doesn't get out. The other story is so fun and easy to tell. I think it just needs to get told to have a chance. If it doesn't get told, you don't have a chance at all. I don't know what the odds are that we're going to fix the problem, but it does not get fixed unless the other story gets told. So that barrier, I've given a little speech here only because Max told me he had a cold and couldn't speak, which is Max actually knows about stuff. I just know I'm good at finding the stories. It just seems urgent, and it seems urgent because you see the response to the things I've written. When I sit down with people and just kind of talk about what I'm working on one now, their jaws are on the floor. Like, really? They do that? He did that for that reason? She did that for that reason? These are amazing. Anybody you get into the Sammy Awards, they come away with tears in their eyes. Like, why is everybody watching the Oscars? They should be watching the Sammys. It's just a no-brainer. I mean, at some point, I'm going to play out this mind. I'm sure that at some point I'm going to wake up and say, "Oh, there are too many people here. I'm going to move on to something else." And my civic duty is done. And Max can give me an award at the Sammys for all the good work I've done telling the stories of civil servants. But this is the horrible truth. It's been nothing but self-interest. I've made a fortune, and I'm going to continue to make a fortune writing about civil servants. That's crazy. It's just crazy.
Michael, that's phenomenal, and such an important statement. I think both in terms of the larger issues at play, and also, certainly, hopefully, for those that are in public affairs out there or in leadership positions, to open the aperture and understand what the best writers like yourself need in order to be able to tell these stories. I heard some advice there to the civil servants themselves, but do you have other thoughts? I mean, as you say that civil servants are at core modest people there for the mission. Any other advice for them about how they should think about their stories, how they should tell their stories, anything of that ilk?
It's funny. Storytelling is a muscle, and telling your own story is a muscle. And people do it or they don't. And when they do it to extreme, it's obnoxious. All you do is hear about themselves. But it would be a fun but slightly bizarre project to force the entire civil service to try to tell a story about itself, every person, like in 60 seconds. interest in audience, not in what you do and in the emotions of what you do. I could tell you they teach that very muscle in the Stanford Business School. I just went and taught a class at the Stanford Business School where the students were all learning how to tell their story. Nobody was very good at it, but this is something business people have to do. They have to sell. And the civil service doesn't really have to sell. I mean, it does in narrow ways, probably within the civil service, but it's just like they don't sell to the public. And it would be fun. That would be useful if people did that and kind of had a sense of what their story was. The bigger thing is, though, when writers come along and they aren't just like evil Heritage Foundation people, and they actually want to write a story, just don't get in the way. Like, just let it happen, and assume that 2 in 10 is going to be bad, that you're going to wish you didn't do it. But that's the price you pay for the 8 and 10 you need to have out there. And just like open the window for people who are curious about what on earth goes on here. The other thing is, it's become very kind of easy and glib to say. I've had a million people say this to me, on television interviews about the book. We need to introduce civics into the curriculum in schools. And I never quite figured out why it left. I took it in the 9th grade. But it isn't just civics. It's like interesting civics. Like, there is a way, these series that we're doing in the Washington Post in September, October, they'll run every Sunday, these big pieces, big stories. They're going to be stapled together as a book. It's really meant as a fun civics class. There's just so that if at an early age, people were, they didn't have to learn about their whole federal government, but they understood a couple of things deeply that the government did, it would just give them pause when someone stands up as a political candidate and says, I'm going to eliminate that, or I'm going to eliminate this, or it's the deep state. It's the alienness of the people that make that pitch possible. And like to hammer home, like, this is a person who does this. Here they are. Here's their heart. Next time you hear a deep state and you put a face to it, it's like, doesn't work. It's what it is? It's a bit like changing a stereotype. It's like, it's very easy to cling to a stereotype when you don't have actual prejudice, a bigotry, when you don't have actual personal interaction with the object of the bigotry or the stereotype. The minute you're in a foxhole with them, the minute you're in a basketball game with them, the minute you're just in a dinner with someone you've been stereotyping, you realize, oh no, stereotypes were wrong, or it's silly. And it's a stereotype we need to kind of like break. And I tell you, the only way I can think to break it is to let the stories be told. I'm coming, I'm a guy with a hammer who sees every problem as a nail. I'm sure there are other ways to do it.
It's a good hammer. You said two things that tie together earlier when you were talking about how civil servants should tell their story. You said that, I'm going to pull out the word. You said they need to explain their emotions, and then just right now you talked about heart, and I just would love to understand better that element of storytelling that you flagged twice here.
This would take a long time, but let me give you an anecdote. Since I mentioned Art Allen, why is this dude spent 30 years of his life figuring out how objects drift in the ocean? Like, that's always my question, is like, why people are doing what they're doing. And is it just like a weird technocratic fascination with that? That's how it would seem from a distance. The second day I was with him, I'm in dinner at his house with him. We're at his kitchen table. He gets up. I'm asking him the question. I badgered him about it, and he hasn't really answered it. He gets up. He goes over his bookshelf. He pulls out from between two books a yellowing copy of a newspaper, the Virginia Pilot or something. And he starts to explain. I've been in the office for 10 years before I was allowed to go out and see search and rescue. It was a day on the Chesapeake. I was at the Coast Guard station there. It was supposed to be calm. There wasn't supposed to be much happening. A storm comes up. Summer storm out of nowhere. Boats capsize, choppers and boats out there saving people. End of the day, there's a boat missing. It's got two older people and a younger woman and her daughter on The woman is my wife's age. The daughter is my daughter's age. I watch as they flail around and they can't find the boat because they don't know how that object drifts on the sea. They find the girl and the mother dead the next morning. He starts telling me the story. He's weeping by the time he goes, you want to know why I do what I do? Because I thought that could be my wife. That could be my daughter. He's crying as he's telling me this. And it wasn't self-advertising emotion. It took me a while to get to this in him. It's in a lot of people who do things in the civil service. They're not there for the money. They're there for something else. Now they may be there for bad reasons, safety, risk aversion, whatever. There may be things that, but there are a lot of people who are there for very deep emotional reasons, doing what they're doing for very deep emotional reasons. And those things resonate with people. You know, you get to the emotion and you connect up to people. Very hard. I mean, if you want to persuade people about something, I don't know how you do it without some emotion. You change minds by changing hearts. I think that's right. You don't just change minds.
That is so beautiful. I have to believe that's the right place to end this conversation. Lindsay, are we good here?
Yes, you're all good. Thank you, Max
Sure.
and Michael, for ending us on quite a high note for today. So thank you all for being here. This, like I said at the beginning, this is our second annual Trust Summit, and I hope you all are as energized about this topic as we are. We have a long road ahead, but we hope that you'll stay connected with us as we go through this. So as I mentioned at the beginning, please look at our website, ourpublicservice.org. We launched a new democracy protection page today, which has a lot more resources and ways that you can think about communicating with this issue. So thank you all, and we hope to see you again soon.